I kept my siblings alive for 10 years. Now my mom, who spent our college fund on wine, is suing me. 48 hours later, she already regretted it. My younger brother Eli's first word was my name, Alex, not Mama or Dada. That should explain everything you need to know about my childhood. While other kids my age were worried about prom dates, I was concerned with making school lunches and checking my brother's homework. But I wouldn't have it any other way, since seeing Eli and my sister Lily grin instantly made all the sacrifices worthwhile. Furthermore, our parents had more essential things to do. Mom developed her interest in multi-level marketing and wine clubs while Eli was still in diapers. She'd hide herself in her home office and create vision boards while Eli wailed in his crib. Dad sought solace in work trips with his secretary Tina, who seemed to join him on all of them. But, honestly, I enjoyed it that way because it compelled me to accomplish things I would not have done otherwise. Every time my parents forgot a parent-teacher meeting or Lily's dancing recital, I got to attend instead. I got to be the reason their faces lit up. I started a savings account the day I turned 16 and deposited every penny from my part-time work, knowing we'd need it when Mom eventually depleted the grocery budget on another failed business idea. And for a while, our system worked flawlessly. I'd get up at 5:30 to pack lunches and check assignments while our parents slept off their hangovers. The children never went hungry, missed an assignment, or felt unwanted. To me, that was all that counted. However, at Eli's high school graduation, something insane occurred. My family and I attended together. Mom wore something other than yoga pants, and Dad left his phone in his pocket for a full 10 minutes. They sat in the front row, as if they had earned their seats, and posted images with messages about their wonderful son. When he stepped over the stage, tears streamed down my cheeks. I felt as though I was seeing my own child grow up. And after 5,000 name calls, it was finally time to leave. Or so I thought, since that's when Eli took the stage to deliver his address. "This speech isn't about me," he said. "It's about the person who made sure I'd be standing here today." He located me in the crowd and we exchanged glances. I wiped away my tears, embarrassed. When I was 6, I fell off the monkey bars and shattered my arm. The person who took me to the hospital was my brother, Alex, who was only 13 and had to convince the nurses that he was old enough to sign the papers. The auditorium grew silent, and even the rustling of programs ceased. Most children learned to ride bikes with their parents. I learned in an empty parking lot at 6 a.m. because Alex worked nights to buy me that bike, and early morning was the only time he had free time. Mom's phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the floor, and Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "So, Mom and Dad," Eli said in a gentle, light-hearted tone, "thank you for giving me the best role model I could wish for." He hoisted his diploma toward me. "This is yours as much as mine, Alex. Actually, it's more yours, because you gave up your own chance to be a kid while raising us." Whispers rang through the gathering, and our extended family members turned to face my parents. Aunt Diane's mouth was open. Uncle Steve was shaking his head slowly, connecting dots from years of missed family gatherings, and the applause began slowly, then built to thunder. After the ceremony, our relatives swarmed us, not our parents, just us. Grandma grabbed my face in her weathered hands, sobbing apologies for not noticing sooner. "We thought you were just being a helpful big brother," she wept. My parents fled before the reception ended, their carefully maintained image shattered beyond repair. But they weren't finished with me. 48 hours later, I was helping Lily practice for her dance recital when the doorbell rang. 2 women in pink suits stood on my porch, CPS badges glinting in the afternoon sun. My blood turned to ice water as they pushed past me like I wasn't even there, documenting everything with phones and notepads. The medication chart I'd created to track Eli's ADHD prescriptions became evidence of unauthorized medical decisions, and the birthday calendar with everyone's doctor's appointments assumed parental authority without legal standing. Even the completely stocked refrigerator was somehow twisted into overcompensation for negligence. Everything immediately made sense because while they made calls regarding emergency placement orders, the woman remarked, "Yes, the biological parents called in the complaint. They're willing to resume full custody right now." Lily grabbed my leg while CPS agents photographed her artwork on the refrigerator. Her tiny fingers dug into my jeans while she whispered something I couldn't quite hear. The taller worker bent down, her phone camera clicking quickly, and the woman straightened up and typed something into her tablet. I watched her fingers move across the screen, documenting Lily's behavior as potential coaching by siblings. My stomach churned as I realized they were twisting everything, including a terrified child seeking comfort. Through the window, I spotted Dad's Mercedes pulling into the driveway, and he stepped out, wearing a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, his phone pressed to his ear. Mom emerged from the passenger side, already typing on her phone. Within seconds, her Facebook post arrived in my feed notification. Fighting for my babies against false accusations. Prayer warriors needed. I glanced at the post while the CPS workers continued their inspection. Mom had tagged 37 people and somehow managed to misspell Eli's middle name as Michael instead of Michael, the same middle name she had given him after her father. Dad strode through the front door without knocking, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had been practicing. While pulling documents from his briefcase, he rattled off something about parental rights and due process, and the CPS workers barely looked up from their tablets. I tried to explain the medication chart to the shorter worker, pointing out how I had color-coded Eli's ADHD medications to prevent missed doses. My hands shook as I showed her the backup alarms I'd set on my phone. She asked for power of attorney documents, and the words caught in my throat. We'd never thought to get any, because I'd been handling everything since I was 13. Then Grandma's car screeched into the driveway, and she burst through the door, demanding to take the children right away. Her face was flushed, and she kept pressing her hand to her chest. Then she swayed slightly, reaching for the wall. I knew the signs. Her blood sugar was rapidly dropping, and she'd need food as well. I looked between her and the filing cabinet where I kept years of documentation. I chose Grandma, grabbed her medication from her purse, and rushed to the kitchen for orange juice and crackers. Behind me, I heard Mom's syrupy sweet voice promising Lily a puppy if she came to live with Mommy and Daddy. She mentioned a pink bedroom, all Lily's own. Lily's little voice resonated across the room. But where will Alex sleep? Mom's pause lasted a beat too long before she launched into descriptions of a princess bed and toys. I studied Grandma in the kitchen chair, watching her color return to normal while precious minutes ticked by. By the time I returned to the living room, our parents had spread like a virus throughout the neighborhood. Mom had cornered the Millers by their mailbox, gesturing wildly as she painted her picture of a troubled oldest child who'd overstepped boundaries. Dad stood on the front lawn with our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Lee, handing her a Starbucks cup while shaking his head sadly. My phone buzzed at the same time with 3 different crises. Our landlord wanted to know why the rent was 2 days late, and the CPS workers demanded documentation of my employment history and financial records, all within 10 minutes. I chose the rent first, and rushed to my laptop to transfer money from the emergency fund I'd built up through years of part-time work. The late fee would eat into our grocery budget, but keeping a roof over our heads was more important. As I hit submit on the payment, I noticed the bank teller processing it was Linda, from Mom's MLM downline, the same woman who'd been pushing essential oils at last month's PTA meeting. The emergency lawyer consultation would cost $300. Dad's composure crumbled when Lily raced past him to get her beloved elephant, calling him Mr. Tyler instead of Dad. His face turned pale, then red, and his hands trembled as he pressed them against his temples. The CPS workers paused their paperwork to watch him hyperventilate into a paper bag Mom produced from her purse. Later, while Dad recovered on the couch with Mom rubbing his back, Eli pulled me aside in the hallway. His eyes were red-rimmed but defensive, and he told me that Dad had apologized for missing all of his baseball games, that he was trying now, and that people deserve second chances. I bit my tongue until it bled, tasting copper while Eli defended the man who had chosen business trips over birthday parties. But I couldn't kill Eli's hope just yet. The CPS workers requested medical records for both kids, so I retrieved the thick folder from my filing cabinet, which I'd kept since taking over their care. As I flipped through it, a faded emergency room report from Lily's 3rd birthday caught my eye. She had fallen off her bike and needed stitches. The signature line showed my name as the guardian who'd brought her in, proof that I'd been parenting since I was 15. I quickly photocopied it, adding it to my growing stack of evidence, and the timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. I remembered that night Mom passed out in her wine-stained bathrobe, and Dad was in Houston for a conference. I was holding Lily's hand while she received 4 stitches in her chin, singing her favorite song to keep her calm. That evening, after the CPS workers had left with their tablets full of twisted documentation, I realized Lily's comfort blanket, which she had slept with every night since birth, was still at our parents' house. I waited until dark, then crept across the property line. The fence was only 4 feet high, and I'd climbed it dozens of times over the years, retrieving balls and toys. But as I swung my leg over the top, a motion sensor triggered. The Ring doorbell camera swiveled to face me, its blue light blinking steadily, recording everything. The next morning, Eli's teacher called, explaining that she needed his academic records from previous years to process his college applications. The records required parental authorization, specifically Mom's authorization, as she was the parent listed on all school forms. I begged Mom to sign the release forms. She smiled and said she'd be pleased to help once the misunderstanding was rectified, once I recognized I'd gone too far, and when I quit striving for family reunification. Aunt Diane arrived that afternoon with coffee and anxious eyes, and she set me down at the kitchen table, where I'd spent years teaching Eli multiplication tables. Aunt Diane's words felt rehearsed as she reminded me of how I'd acted when Grandpa died, how I'd refused help and tried to handle everything alone. I was 8 years old at the time, and our parents were in Vegas, unreachable. I'd made sandwiches for Eli and Lily, kept them calm and told them stories until Grandma could fly in from Florida. But Aunt Diane's version painted me as controlling and unable to accept help, just like now. Mom's Facebook campaign grew by the hour, with 147 likes and dozens of supportive comments on her post about healing our family. When I tried to respond with facts, explaining the years of neglect, my comment was screenshotted and reported as harassment, and my account was suspended within hours. The lawyer I'd consulted sent a formal letter to my parents' attorney, who responded quickly. My daily texts checking on Eli and Lily were being documented as a harassment campaign against a family attempting to reunify, and each concerned message became evidence of my inability to respect boundaries. Dad still had control over the kids' health insurance through his employer, so when Eli's ADHD medication ran out, I called in a refill, only to have it denied, because Dad's insurance wouldn't approve it without his explicit consent. He texted me his terms: stop this nonsense, admit you'd overreached, and he'd approve the medication. Eli's prescription would expire in 3 days. I spent 6 hours at the pharmacy trying to navigate insurance overrides and prior authorizations. When I woke up crying from a stress dream, still in the pharmacy waiting area, the pharmacist exchanged worried glances with her colleague, and I saw her type something into the computer, most likely a note about potential substance abuse. Maya, my best friend since middle school, had watched me raise Eli and Lily, brought groceries when money was tight, and held me while I cried from exhaustion. But when she met me for coffee, her hands wrapped around her mug like a shield. Her husband had concerns. If I continued this fight, if I kept challenging parents' rights, they couldn't let me babysit their kids anymore. The liability was too high, the association too risky. She cried as she said it, but she. The neighborhood whispers began subtly, conversations that stopped when I walked by, eyes that followed me to the mailbox, and then someone sent me a screenshot from our local Facebook group. Anyone else worried about the Alex situation? The post had 89 comments, with neighbors discussing my mental state, my fitness as a caregiver, and whether someone should do anything. Mom claimed she went to Eli's science fair 2 months ago and posted photos of her arm around him in the gymnasium, but the timestamp was incorrect, and the photos were from the previous year's fair. The same week she posted photos from her Vegas trip of cocktails by the pool while Eli presented his renewable energy project to empty seats. My coworker Josh stated that he needed help with his taxes, and Mom offered to help through her new financial consultancy business, explaining how he could write off his entire home office, possibly even his car. This was classic MLM tax fraud disguised as knowledge. When I demonstrated Mom had lied about the scientific fair by revealing the date discrepancy, it revealed an uncomfortable truth. I had missed it as well, working a double shift to cover Lily's dancing outfits. Eli's somber remark cut through my vindication. At least you told me why you couldn't come. Small triumphs seemed hollow. Eli's teacher agreed to write a support letter for our case, and I celebrated with a glass of wine that evening, my first drink in months. Through the kitchen window, I noticed my neighbor's phone camera pointing at me. Before dawn, there would be proof of my drinking problem. Mom's final text that week was short but clear. "This doesn't end until one of us gives up. I've got nothing left to lose." She was mistaken about having nothing to lose, but she was correct about one thing. I'd raised 2 children from diapers to diplomas, survived on 3 hours of sleep and ramen noodles, and had given up my childhood so they could have theirs. I didn't know how to give up. The following week, Dad arrived at Lily's dance studio with a new person, my coworker Hannah, who strolled in holding his hand and dressed in a sundress that matched Lily's leotard. Hannah sat down to Lily's level and pulled out a worn copy of Junie B. Jones from her purse. Lily's eyes brightened up as Hannah turned to a dog-eared page and began discussing their favorite sections. I observed from the parent observation area as Hannah braided Lily's hair before class, using the same technique I showed her last year. Dad stood behind them, documenting everything on his phone while the other parents exchanged glances, clearly aware of the custody issue based on neighborhood gossip. After class, Lily approached me first, but paused when she spotted Dad waiting, and Hannah handed her a new Junie B. Jones book that was still in its wrapping. Lily clutched it to her chest, looking between all 3 adults with confusion on her face. That night, I found myself scrolling through old text messages, searching for anything that might help my case, but instead I discovered conversations I'd forgotten about. 3 years ago, I told Mom I'd handle bedtime so she could rest, and she thanked me profusely. My phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. Someone had forwarded me a screenshot from a group chat I wasn't a part of. My old text to a friend from sophomore year filled the screen. "Sometimes I wish I could just be a normal teenager." Her lawyer would argue that I'd systematically excluded her from parenting responsibilities. The note was dated 2 weeks after I began working nights to pay for Eli's therapy, and someone had added a comment about my resentment of my siblings beneath it. Lily sat in the judge's chambers for her interview as we waited outside, and when she returned, her face was red and swollen. The preliminary custody hearing came faster than planned. The court advocate whispered something to the judge, who took notes on her legal pad. Later, the transcript revealed Lily's innocent words twisted into weapons. "I used to lock the door when Mommy tried to come in at night." She didn't realize she was describing the night Mom stumbled home hammered, demanding to see the kids at 2 a.m. My lawyer requested old baby monitor footage from our home security system, and what we discovered made my chest tight. Frame after frame showed a teenage me rocking Eli to sleep, changing diapers and preparing bottles, while the sounds of our parents' parties filtered through the walls. Lily only remembered me saying Mommy was sick and needed to sleep. Laughter, music, clinking glasses, a timestamp of 1:47 a.m. on a school night. The family court mediator examined the footage with a furrowed brow, making notes on parentification and role reversal before turning to me and explaining how my parents' neglect had forced me into an inappropriate role. Instead of holding them accountable, she focused on how I had contributed to the problem by failing to get help sooner. I knew Mom's Amazon login from years of ordering school supplies, so I got into her account late one night and downloaded 5 years of order data. The proof was damning. Wine subscriptions, bar accessories, and party supplies were the most common orders. During the same period, diaper orders were sparse and formula purchases were non-existent. The browser's autofill revealed more than I expected. As I typed wine, the suggestions appeared. Wine bottle opener bulk, wine stain remover, wine storage cabinet. Searches for baby formula or diapers yielded nothing. Eli's pneumonia hospitalization coincided with a conference in Denver, while Lily's first day of kindergarten coincided with a client meeting in Seattle. However, Dad's LinkedIn profile contradicted his court testimony, and the client meeting had to be rescheduled because the conference was virtual. He'd simply chosen not to be there. I compiled everything into a folder, cross-referencing dates with family photos, and the pattern was undeniable. Every milestone, every emergency, every important moment, our parents were absent, but their social media showed a different story. Carefully curated posts about family time using photos I'd taken, cropped to exclude me. My old therapist was subpoenaed to testify about our sessions from when I was 16. I'd seen her through a school program after a teacher noticed me falling asleep in class, and the court would have access to everything I'd told her about feeling like a parent, the pressure, and wishing I could just be a kid. During a strategy discussion, my lawyer emphasized the hard truth that the court would consider my actions as aiding our parents' negligence rather than defending my siblings, and that by stepping up I had allowed them to step back without penalties. The logic made me want to scream. I tried to record a conversation with Mom at a coffee shop, hoping she'd admit to the neglect. My phone sat face down on the table, recording apps running, but Mom noticed the faint glow from the screen. She smiled sadly and shook her head, then spoke loudly about how I was always watching, recording, and trying to make them look bad. I sat in my car across the street, watching the clock tick past 3:15. School policy required children to be released only to authorized guardians. At 3:27, Mom's car finally pulled up, and she waved at the other parents as if nothing was wrong, as if she hadn't kept Lily waiting, anxious and alone, for so long. Eli's teacher approached me after school one day. She had been one of our strongest supporters, willing to testify about the years of parent-teacher conferences I'd attended alone, but her expression was grim. She explained that the administration had warned her not to get involved because she had 3 children of her own and couldn't risk losing her job. She gripped my hand and went away, and the simple actions hurt the most. Mom began wearing the same perfume that our grandma used to wear. She'd found Grandma's old coffee mug with painted flowers and used it during supervised visits, even sitting in Grandma's spot at the kitchen table, unconsciously mimicking her mannerisms. Our parents' lawyer had sent me a settlement offer in which they agreed to supervised visits for me if I dropped all neglect allegations and publicly admitted to overstepping boundaries. I tore the letter into pieces and carefully taped it back together, evidence of their manipulation and proof that they knew exactly what they'd done. The letter included a prepared statement about how I'd misunderstood their different parenting style and needed help accepting my role as a sibling, not a parent. The security footage I remembered from the pharmacy visit turned out to be from a different location entirely. When I pulled the correct footage, it showed something even more damning. Mom buying wine and lottery tickets while Eli waited in the car with a 102-degree fever. The timestamp matched the pediatrician's records of his delayed treatment. During class cleanup, Lily's art teacher discovered something hidden beneath construction paper in Lily's cubby. Dozens of drawings and pictures of our real life. Me making breakfast, helping with homework, tucking her in, with 2 small figures labeled Mommy and Daddy. Always separate, always distracted, always holding wine glasses or phones. While reviewing the medication charts that CPS had photographed, I noticed discrepancies in the prescription numbers. Cross-referencing with pharmacy records revealed that Mom had been forging prescriptions for pain medication under the children's names. Grandma faced an impossible choice: support me or risk losing her relationship with her daughter and access to her grandchildren. I found her crying in her kitchen, holding Eli's baby photo, explaining that she couldn't lose them again after having lost so much already. She'd publicly support our parents, but before I left, she gave me a key to her filing cabinet, where I discovered years of correspondence between Grandma and various family members, all of whom expressed concern about our parents. Letters from Aunt Diane about Mom's drinking, emails from Uncle Steve about Dad's priorities. A Christmas card from our late grandfather with a handwritten note. "Those children need you. Don't wait too long." I began to play Mom's game, and my social media posts went from defensive to hopeful, as I prayed for healing and reconciliation. I also took screenshots of everything, documented every encounter, and carefully established my case. I learned to smile while gathering evidence. I was grabbing coffee when Tina walked in, talking loudly on her phone about her weekend plans. I approached casually, making small talk about the weather, and she relaxed, unaware that I was photographing her car through the window. Mom passed out on the couch while toddler Lily played unsupervised. Dad's business trips with Tina, complete with romantic dinner photos. Eli's baseball schedule was taped to her dashboard, next to a parking pass for Dad's office building, and our shared iCloud account became a goldmine of photos our parents had forgotten about. Eli's first day of school with only myself in the photos. I downloaded everything before they decided to revoke my access. The custody struggle became more complicated when Eli's biological father emerged from prison. Mom had never told us that Dad was not Eli's original father, and now this stranger sought visitation rights, turning our 2-way battle into a 3-way war. When Lily's emergency therapy appointment clashed with a crucial court deadline, I chose the legal filing, knowing that it would be marked as a missed appointment in her medical records, further proving that I wasn't the perfect guardian I claimed to be. The financial strain reached a breaking point. My emergency fund, built over years of sacrifice, emptied into lawyer fees, while Mom used Dad's life insurance payout, which should have gone to our education, to hire a prestigious family law firm. The imbalance felt like drowning in slow motion. The confrontation at Eli's favorite pizza place started small. I was treating him to dinner when our parents walked in with their lawyer. Voices rose. Other customers started. The teenage staff looked terrified as Dad slammed his hand on the counter. The manager banned all of us and Eli lost his safe space because adults couldn't control themselves. My employer said it was a mutual decision, but I knew it wasn't. The court dates, the drama, the constant phone calls were all too much for them, and my replacement, Hannah, redecorated my desk the same day, hanging photos of herself and her father as if she'd already won. I slept in my car outside the kids' school some nights, telling myself I was keeping an eye on them and making sure they were safe. But really, I had nowhere else to go. My apartment felt empty without their voices, while our parents transformed Lily's room into a game room, erasing her presence as if she had never lived there. Uncle Steve found me in the parking lot one morning, his face worn from family drama, and he begged me to let it go, telling me I was calling Mom with stress. He didn't mention the years of stress I'd been through, or how Mom's choices had nearly cost her children via neglect. My study into our parents' past uncovered a cascade of consequences. Eli's teacher was suspended for failing to report suspected abuse, despite the fact that she had tried to help in her own way. Her daughter inquired as to why Mommy cried at dinner. Her husband filed for divorce, citing the stress of our family's drama. Another life was destroyed by our war, and I persisted, documenting every lie, manipulation, and failure. Even when Maya met me in the Walmart parking lot to ask if I was sure our parents hadn't changed, even when I couldn't answer right away, doubt creeping in like poison. Even when the evidence showed I had failed as well, the discovery of Eli's essay, which his teacher provided as part of the court documentation, hit hard. The subject was, "What makes me sad?" and he expressed feeling invisible in precise handwriting, wishing someone would notice him just for himself, not for his grades or behavior. I'd never noticed it because I was too preoccupied with making sure he had lunch money to observe his heart bleeding. Our parents' lawyer submitted an emergency application to move the trial date up. They knew my lawyer had a long-planned trip to Bermuda, so they researched his calendar and prepared their attack appropriately. This was legal warfare at its finest, with procedure serving as the weapon. Reading Mom's old journals revealed the terrible truth. She had wanted to be a good mother, and the entries from Eli's first year demonstrated true love and intention. In her eyes, I hadn't helped. I'd taken away her chance to try again. Addiction took hold gradually, then all at once, and the plots and booze became more appealing than facing her failures. Dad's rage made more sense when viewed through the prism of guilt. Every allegation he leveled at me was truly intended for himself. I was an easier target than his own reflection, and acknowledging I'd reared his children meant admitting he'd failed them. His wrath was self-preservation dressed up as righteousness. The violation of Eli's trust was like swallowing glass, and his therapy notes revealed that he was split between loyalty to me and longing for our parents. To prove negligence, I had to divulge his intimate thoughts to the court. Another casualty of war is the sacred trust that siblings share. The old Alex, who had helped without question and loved unconditionally, died in that courtroom. I became someone I didn't recognize. I took screenshots of everything. I trusted no one. Every encounter was possible proof. Every kindness might be exploited. What emerged was a survivor who understood that being cruel was sometimes necessary in order to be compassionate. Getting Lily's teacher to testify required leverage I didn't want to use. I knew about her husband's DUI, which he had kept secret from his employment, and the implication lingered between us during our conversation. She consented to testify. Her eyes were filled with hatred, and another bridge had been burned for the greater good. The short visitation triumph seemed hollow. I watched from my car as Dad taught Eli to toss a football in the park. They both wore sunglasses, but I could see their shoulders quivering. They were crying, attempting to rebuild a relationship on the rubble of 13 years apart. It should have felt like winning, but instead it seemed like everyone was losing. Our parents' counterclaim gained traction with each passing week. Their counsel constructed a picture of a damaged young adult with a savior complex who needed therapy rather than custody. They were not horrible parents, they were victims of an overzealous child who couldn't let go. The narrative was clear, concise, and credible. Our entire future was in the hands of a stranger who would spend a few hours attempting to comprehend 13 years of intricate family relationships. Dr. Lewis, the court-appointed psychologist, would conduct an interview with all parties involved and offer recommendations. The past haunted every interaction. At the grocery store, Mom's dealer's child approached me, asking why I didn't visit anymore. I'd babysat him for free when his mother needed help, back when I believed kindness didn't need to be repaid. Now his mother had leveraged knowledge of our family's dysfunction to harm my case. My previous boss gave me a job back with conditions, put the family issue behind me, focus on work, and pretend nothing happened. The offer ended in 48 hours, which was just enough time to seem like a lifeline, but not enough to see how the custody battle would conclude. During a preliminary hearing, the judge stated that love was not enough for custody. The court required evidence of stability, proper boundaries, and the best interests of the children. All the nights I'd spent with sick children, all the sacrifices I'd made, were just emotions in the eyes of the court, which dealt in facts. Mom's estranged sister emerged from years of silence. She owed me for helping with her rehab costs when no one else would, and her repayment came in the form of family history documentation of Mom's patterns dating back decades. She couldn't testify in person or face her sister in court, but the papers she provided painted a damning picture. The paperwork revealed Mom's determined choices. She had known Dad was gone but stayed for the property and insurance, and she had prioritized financial security over her children's emotional well-being. Every wine bottle was a decision, and every missed recital was a priority. The pages revealed a history of pain across generations. Mom's father had been an alcoholic who had chosen bottles above babies, and she had pledged to be different, only to repeat every pattern. The cycle of addiction and neglect had been passed down through generations, and she had seen what it was like to be abandoned. She had done it anyway. Finding Mom's notebook was like uncovering a route map for her soul. The entries from 10 years ago hidden in Grandma's filing cabinet were raw and honest. She admitted to letting me handle everything because it was easier. She recognized her failures even as she committed them. The self-awareness made it worse, not better. Her fear and self-hatred leaked from every page. She was failing but couldn't stop. In her twisted reasoning, I had not protected the children, but rather facilitated her annihilation by postponing consequences. The wine dulled the humiliation, which caused more shame, which necessitated even more drink. During a sleepless night, I realized that Mom, like her father, had chosen addiction over her children. She knew the suffering personally, had suffered it, and had vowed to break the cycle. Instead, she'd perfected and refined it to make it socially acceptable through wine clubs and MLM scams. Even if it meant losing Eli and Lily to the system or damaging every relationship I had, I was determined to end the cycle. Dad's deposition finally provided concrete evidence of willful neglect. He claimed to have attended a conference in Chicago during Eli's hospitalization, but the conference had been canceled due to inclement weather. He went anyway, spending 3 days with Tina while his son struggled to breathe in a hospital bed. I delivered the evidence without satisfaction. Dad's shoulders slumped as his lawyer shouted urgently in his ear. I kept my voice steady and professional. This wasn't about vengeance, but about safety. The pattern became clear as testimony aligned. Teachers, physicians, and neighbors all painted the same picture. 2 absent parents and 1 overwhelmed teenager attempting to keep a family together. The evidence was overwhelming, yet I didn't feel victorious, only exhausted. Dr. Lewis's review loomed like a thundercloud, and both sides prepared their presentations, accumulating data to back up their arguments. Everything we'd accumulated over weeks of legal fights would be filtered through one person's expert opinion. The last preparation felt like preparing for war. Lawyers strategized, evidence was organized, witnesses were prepared, yet beneath all of the legal maneuvering was a basic truth. 3 youngsters required safety and stability. Everything else was simply noise. Mom's hands shook from withdrawal, Dad had gained 30 pounds from stress, and I had lost so much hair that Lily wondered if I was sick. We were destroying ourselves to demonstrate who deserved to be destroyed. But I'd survived worse. I'd raised 2 children on the minimum wage and with dedication, giving up my youth so they might have theirs. This was just another sacrifice in a lifetime of them.